The medical bay aboard the Varelli Federation's flagship, Tessari Arc-9, was pristine, sterile, and engineered to withstand every known pathogen in the galactic database. It had treated Vrel blood fungus, aggressive spore bursts, and once even the self-cloning larvae of the Ragath Nebula. But nothing in the Tri-Sector's most advanced medical archives prepared Dr. Kellen for the Earthman, who walked in holding a swollen hand and muttering something about a misjudged crate corner and 2 left feet. The human's name was Drew Carver, mid-30s by Earth standards, lanky build, shaggy blonde hair that never quite obeyed gravitational norms, and an accent that confused even the universal translator. Kellen stared at the hand, then looked up at Drew. "You claim this occurred due to blunt trauma?" "Yeah," Drew nodded, grimacing. "Crate fell. My fault. Kind of slipped while trying to stack rations. Felt a jolt, some tingling, figured I sprained it or something." Kellen, tall and teal, skinned with bioluminescent veins, flicked his multi-lens oculars forward and ran a standard dermal scan. No fracture appeared in the superficial reading, but there was mild swelling and subdermal bruising. Nothing to panic over. "Standard protocol," Kellen murmured, nodding to the medtech, who activated the deep tissue scanner. The device hummed. Drew flinched. "Is that thing supposed to feel cold inside my bones?" "You are not feeling the beam, Mr. Carver. That is psychosomatic discomfort." Kellen had just finished his sentence when the medtech gasped. A moving blur appeared on the screen. A thin, dark shape shifted under Drew's skin near the metacarpals. It pulsed once, then again, then slithered. "Internal parasite," the medtech whispered. "It's breathing," Kellen added, transfixed. Security was summoned. Within 3 minutes, the medbay was surrounded. Drew blinked in confusion as containment shields powered up. "Okay," he said slowly. "That feels like an overreaction for a sore hand." "You have a living organism inside your body," Kellen snapped. "Uncatalogued, mobile. It is evading direct scanning and has its own metabolic rhythm." Drew looked from Kellen to the screen and back again. "Oh, the leech?" There was a solid 5 seconds of silence. "The what?" "The leech," Drew repeated, slightly annoyed. "I put it on this morning to reduce the swelling. Old Earth trick. The saliva has anticoagulants and stuff, and they suck out pooled blood. Works wonders on bruising." "You voluntarily applied a parasite to yourself?" "It's not a parasite," Drew protested. "It's more like a medical tool. Has a bit of a PR problem, sure, but they're safe. This one's name is Bernie." "You named it." "Well, he's doing a service. Felt like he deserved it." The medtech looked like she might pass out. Kellen gestured for the isolation shield to be lowered. "Remove it. Immediately." Drew sighed and reached into his kit pouch. "All right, but you guys are seriously behind on complementary medicine." With a practiced flick, he unwrapped the gauze around his hand. Sure enough, a fat, black leech clung lazily between his thumb and index finger. Drew used a drop of saline to gently detach it, then placed it in a small bio-vial. Bernie twitched, full and content. Drew held out his hand. "See? Harmless." The scans continued automatically. Kellen was about to issue a clearance when the system pinged again, this time deeper. "Wait." The image shifted. Beneath the tendon layers, something shimmered, not organic. The scan paused and refocused. "Metallic signature detected," the medtech murmured. 3 slender, glinting threads were visible around the flexor tendons. They moved microscopically in sync with Drew's muscle contractions. "Those are not natural," Kellen stated, stepping back. "Oh, those," Drew said, and scratched the back of his neck. "Right, forgot about those." "You forgot," Kellen repeated. "Well, it's been a while. Got those after my second deployment. Military thing. Nerve sheath reinforcement, I think. Keeps the fine motor control stable under high G stress." Kellen's face darkened to a deeper shade of blue. "You are augmented." Drew shrugged. "Technically, but it's not weaponized. Just stability gear. Unregistered biomechanical enhancements are a violation of Federation transit law under Article 4.9, Kellen said tightly. "You were not declared during medical intake." "I didn't think it mattered," Drew replied. "It's not invasive tech, it's passive. No external ports, no active AI. You wouldn't even know it was there unless you scanned my tendons on full spectrum. That is exactly what we did, Kellen snapped. Within moments, a different team entered. Not medical, security. Drew raised his hands instinctively. Let's not get twitchy. You have undeclared modifications and a history of invasive biology in your body, the lead officer said, eyes narrowing. You may be in breach of multiple interspecies regulations. Step away from the medbay. Oh, come on. It was just a leech and some tendon wire. I'm not a cyborg assassin. No one mentioned assassination, the officer said. Yet, Drew muttered. Kellen stepped between them. Before we escalate, we require clarification. These implants, how were they inserted? Microsurgery, under general anesthesia. Took me 6 weeks to recover. It's all logged somewhere on Earth. Probably, I think. Look, it was Black Ops adjacent, okay? A lot of the files get buried. The officer leaned toward Kellen. How do we verify he's telling the truth? Biopsy, Kellen said grimly. Drew paled. Wait, you want to cut into my hand to confirm what I already told you? You wish us to rely on your memory, which conveniently forgot both a blood-sucking organism and classified internal tech? Fair point, Drew admitted. The biopsy was scheduled for 2 hours later. He wasn't allowed to leave the medbay. The security detail stayed outside the door, visibly armed. Kellen returned with sterilized equipment. I will make a small incision, extract a tissue sample near the implant site, and analyze the material. If it confirms passive augmentation, no further action will be taken. If it doesn't, then I alert command. Drew nodded reluctantly. Do I at least get something for the pain? Kellen raised a brow. You carried a live leech in your hand, Mr. Carver. I assumed you preferred the natural route. Touché. The numbing agent kicked in quickly. Kellen worked efficiently, drawing a centimeter-long strip of tissue and securing it in a sealed sample tube. Drew winced as the final suture was placed. Recovery for this? 2 weeks without strain, longer if complications arise. Perfect, Drew sighed. That crate stacking was going so well too. An hour later, Kellen returned, face unreadable. He held up the scan results. Drew squinted. I see fibers. They are not passive. These strands respond to neural impulses at speeds exceeding standard biocompatibility limits. They self-adjust under electrical stimuli and generate a stabilizing field during high muscle use. That requires energy regulation. That is not passive tech. Drew blinked. Well, I didn't know they did all that. I just signed the release form. You are in possession of undocumented military-grade augmentation with untraceable command routes, Kellen stated flatly. And you walk among civilian crews? Drew opened his mouth to respond. But Kellen wasn't done. You are either extremely dangerous, extremely naive, or extremely well protected. I'm just the guy who unpacks food crates and keeps spiders off the ceiling. Kellen stared at him. Spiders? Long story. Not real ones, but they had 8 legs and a grudge. Kellen pressed his palm to his forehead and exhaled. I must now file a provisional threat report and submit you for further evaluation. Until cleared, you will remain under observation. You're kidding. I never kid. Drew leaned back against the wall, looked down at his bandaged hand, and muttered, Bernie's gonna be pissed he missed this drama. Drew spent the next 11 hours in Medical Isolation Chamber 3, a transparent, cube-like enclosure that somehow managed to make him feel like both a zoo exhibit and a contagion. The bed was stiff, the lighting slightly too blue, and every time he shifted, the environmental systems hummed like an annoyed beehive. Outside the glass, Kellen worked silently at a console, analyzing the biopsy sample. Occasionally, he looked up at Drew with a mixture of concern and suspicion. Drew responded with a weak thumbs up the first few times, but eventually stopped when it became clear Kellen wasn't reciprocating. At hour 12, the door slid open, and Commander Velix entered. Tall, imposing, and always appearing as if she had just stepped out of a military sculpture garden, she wore the dark navy uniform of Federation security. Her pale gold eyes swept the room and locked onto Drew like targeting reticles. I have questions, she said before Kellen could even greet her. Of course you do, Drew said, sitting upright. Just let me know if this ends in dissection so I can mentally prepare. Velix ignored that. She turned to Kellen. You've confirmed the implant is active? Yes, Kellen said. And uniquely engineered. It appears Earth origin, but with modular reactivity that suggests a level of synthetic organic interface we've not seen outside classified labs. Fantastic, Velik said, and turned back to Drew. Who are you really? Drew Carver, civilian contractor, stack things, sometimes fix leaky vents, once wrestled a coolant hose into submission, but I don't think that counts. Kellen handed Velix a data pad. She scrolled through the readings. No biometric uplink, no external control port, but the implant reads muscle tension and seems to correct torque ratios in real time. That kind of system requires calibration algorithms. I told you, I had no idea it did all that, Drew said. I thought it was just some kind of support mesh for fine motor control. Velix didn't respond right away. Then, almost offhandedly, she asked, Have you ever experienced heightened strength or endurance beyond normal human limits? No, Drew said quickly, but then paused. Well, maybe once, when I lifted a storage panel that was definitely over my limit, but I figured adrenaline was kicking in. There was a fire nearby. Sort of. You just remembered a fire? Kellen asked. I was busy trying not to get roasted. My memory has priorities. Velix exchanged a glance with Kellen. We need to determine if his enhancements can be externally activated. I really don't think I'm a sleeper agent, Drew said. I still cry at some commercials. Pretty sure that disqualifies me. You may not be aware of any activation protocols, Kellen said calmly. We've seen this before, implants that respond to environmental triggers or neurological thresholds. That may be why you're unaware of their full capacity. Velix stepped toward the containment glass. Until further notice, you are classified as a potential threat. You will remain under observation. We will run non-invasive tests first, but should anything activate, you'll be restrained. Comforting, Drew muttered. Is there at least lunch involved? No, Velix said. Even less comforting. The next 36 hours were a blur of controlled exercises. Drew was made to flex, grip, lift, and manipulate objects, while under scanner arrays that could detect electrical variance on the molecular level. He was watched while sleeping, monitored during every breath, and once woken mid-dream to answer questions about coordinates he didn't recognize. By the third day, Drew was beginning to feel like a stress ball in a philosophy class. Kellen, for his part, had gone from suspicious to professionally curious. These implants are responding to hormonal shifts, he explained after one test. Your cortisol levels spike, and the fibers subtly realign to distribute strain across neighboring tendons. That is adaptive engineering. Drew looked at his hand. So I have stress-responsive hand tendons? Essentially. That's so deeply specific. There may be more, Kellen admitted. We haven't scanned your other limbs yet. Drew froze. Wait, are you suggesting these things might be in more places than just my hand? We must be thorough, Kellen said. Can I request sedation for surprise revelations? Number. 2 days later, Drew was transferred to an enhanced diagnostic chamber, a spherical room with suspended sensor drones, and a 360-degree motion tracking platform. He was stripped to a scan suit and strapped to a rotating axis that slowly tilted as Kellen began full-body scans. It took 2 hours. At the end of it, Kellen returned with a single line that made Drew feel very, very cold. There are 3 more implants. Drew stood up too quickly and had to catch himself on the rail. Where? 1 in your cervical spine, 2 embedded in the femoral muscle sheaths. Drew sat back down. The spinal one. What does it do? Unknown. Possibly a coordination regulator. Possibly inert. Possibly dormant. Velix entered the chamber. She had been watching the scan from a secure link. You're now classified as a biomechanical carrier with unknown augmentation. Until Earth authorities provide matching medical files, you cannot be cleared for unrestricted contact. I never asked for these things to turn into a diplomatic nightmare, Drew said. I just wanted to stop my hand from swelling. Speaking of which, Kellen said, checking the previous biopsy site, the recovery is progressing normally. Scarring is minimal. Sutures can be removed in 3 days. Drew groaned. Silver lining. Kellen looked back at the scan display. We're not done. Drew stiffened. What now? One of the implants responded to your REM cycle last night. Very faint, but it emitted a pattern. A signal? Not exactly. More like a rhythmic fluctuation, like a heartbeat echo. Drew swallowed hard. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that's not supposed to happen. Number, it is not. Felix crossed her arms. We need a behavioral neurospecialist, and Earth needs to respond to our data request, immediately. I submitted the request to Earth Command 3 days ago, Kellen said. No reply, no acknowledgement. Felix exhaled. We may be dealing with a blacklisted program. Drew looked between them. Wait, blacklisted? As in illegal? As in so secret even Earth doesn't want to admit it exists, Kellen clarified. Well, that's perfect, Drew muttered. I'm basically carrying around government secrets I didn't even ask for. Do I get hazard pay for this? No, Felix said again. Hours later, Drew was alone in the diagnostic chamber when the lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the walls. He sat up, suddenly aware of a tightening sensation in his right thigh. A pressure. Subtle, but growing. He pressed his hand against it. Then movement. Not like Bernie. Not alive. Like a flex, a coil tightening, something internal responding to something else. Drew inhaled sharply. The implant was active. Kellen, he said, tapping the wall console. We might have a situation. Within seconds, Kellen burst into the room with a medkit and scanner. The implant had warmed by 2 degrees. Its fibers twitched subtly, then settled. No external trigger, Kellen said. Then what was it? I don't know, Kellen admitted, but it activated while you were alone. That suggests autonomous feedback. Like it's thinking? Number like it's listening. That didn't make Drew feel better. 2 more days passed. Earth Command finally replied. A single transmission. Classified Implant Series Delta 71. Subject, Carver, Drew. Status, authorized. Complications, unknown. Monitor for anomalies. Do not extract. Felix stared at the message. That's it? No technical specs. No behavioral notes. Not even an implant map, Kellen said, frustrated. Then we're on our own. Drew rubbed his temple. I could have told you that 4 days ago. The implants didn't activate again that week. But Drew couldn't sleep. He kept feeling them. Not pain, not even pressure. Just presence. Like something waiting. Waiting for the right moment. The crew of the Tesari Arc 9 had begun referring to Drew as the quiet weapon. Not to his face, never to his face, but whispers carried far in the recycled air of a Federation ship. Everywhere he walked, eyes tracked him. Conversations tapered off mid-sentence. Even the cafeteria bot hesitated longer before serving his protein ration. Drew tried to brush it off. He spent more time alone, keeping to small tasks in restricted zones where he could still contribute. He recalibrated oxygen valves, sorted mislabeled stasis food crates, patched a humming coolant vent with a strip of thermal tape and 2 apologies, all one-handed, since the biopsy site on his right hand was still healing. The sutures weren't due out for another day. Despite the tension, he appreciated the break from invasive scans. Kellen had called for a 48-hour observational pause. To prevent psychosomatic interference, he'd said. Drew suspected he just didn't want to argue with Felix again over jurisdictional protocol. But even in quiet moments, Drew couldn't shake the awareness. The implants were still inactive, but present, like bones he hadn't known were there. At 19 o'clock ship time on the 6th day, he sat alone in his bunk, nursing a mug of lukewarm Nutri-Drink, when the message came through. Private terminal notification. Sender, Dr. Leon Reese, Earth Medical Command. Message. Mr. Carver, I reviewed your file. I was one of the neurosurgeons assigned to your Delta 71 procedure 8 years ago. You won't remember me. The protocol included partial memory inhibition. Temporary, they said. I argued. Lost. There are things you need to know, confidentially. Meet me via secure link. Use port 14 ampere. Do not involve station command. You are not in danger from the implants, but the ship may be. The message expired within 30 seconds. Drew sat still, heartbeat suddenly loud in his ears. He glanced around the dim room. No surveillance here, he'd checked that first thing after being granted access to private quarters again. Port 14 Ampere was in the communications wing, sealed, generally unused, a backup link in case of long-range relay failure. He weighed the options for 10 minutes, then pulled on his boots and left without a word. Port 14 Ampere smelled like dust and sterilized metal. Drew keyed in his crew access code and stepped inside. The interface glowed a soft amber. He followed the instructions and activated the encrypted line. Dr. Leon Reese appeared as a holo a moment later. Her features were sharp but kind, older than he expected. She wore a white lab coat that bore a faint burn mark across the pocket. "Drew," she said, smiling briefly. "You look better than the last time I saw you. You remember me. I don't remember anything, not even the prep. I just woke up in a recovery bay with a tube in my arm and a certificate saying I was fit for duty." Reese nodded. "That was by design. I'm guessing you're not supposed to be talking to me. Not without clearance. But things have changed." Drew crossed his arms. "Tell me what these things in my body really are." "They're not weapons," Reese said. "They were never meant to be. That's not comforting. They're biomechanical stabilizers. Early generation. You were part of the Delta 71 program volunteers selected for high-risk deployments. You agreed to have them installed after the Joint Operations Act expanded civilian-military integration. Your mission profile required precise, fine motor retention during neurological stress. We created implants that synced with muscle groups and adjusted dynamically to your nervous system. That sounds pretty great. Why hide it? Because something went wrong. 5 of you were implanted. 3 showed rejection symptoms. 1 developed severe nerve misfires. Only you remained stable. And so they just wiped my memory of the whole thing? We didn't wipe. We suppressed. Temporary inhibitors meant to fade. But then your assignments changed. You got transferred out of military oversight. We lost access to you." Reese paused, as if deciding how much more to say. "There's something else. The implants are reactive. That's their strength. But we've since learned they also learn." Drew blinked. "Excuse me?" "They build behavioral maps, adjust autonomously, not AI, not sentient. But they develop patterns, preferences even. We think they're building predictive responses to keep you physically safe." "Predictive like?" "Like adjusting your balance milliseconds before you trip. Tightening muscles when your posture degrades. Redirecting tension before a sprain. But it goes deeper." Drew sat slowly. "How deep?" "They might be anticipating threats." He rubbed his temple. "That doesn't sound not weaponized to me." "It's instinctive," she said. "Not aggression, defense. But if the ship's systems, or anyone on board, get misclassified by the pattern." Drew's stomach turned. "You think I'm a liability?" "I think your body may react faster than your judgment. That's dangerous in a shared environment." He exhaled. "They've already started treating me like a walking bomb." Reese leaned closer. "Then you need to prove you're not. Any advice?" "Test them. Push the pattern. Let them surface. Then show command you're still the one in control." Drew ended the call with his heart hammering. He left port 14 Ampere and walked back to his room with his jaw tight and hands trembling. The next morning, Kellen removed his sutures. "Clean healing," he said. "Minimal scar formation." "Good," Drew muttered. "You appear unsettled." "I had a conversation," Drew said carefully. "One that helped connect a few dots." Kellen watched him closely but said nothing. "I want to run a voluntary test," Drew continued. "Extreme stimuli. See what triggers the implants. I need to know what I'm carrying around." Kellen hesitated. "That is not advisable without oversight." "Then oversee it, but I'm not sitting around waiting for something to go wrong. Either I figure this out, or the ship bans me from every vent and corridor." "You think Velix will let me near another toolkit without answers?" Kellen didn't answer for several seconds, then nodded slowly. "We'll do it under controlled conditions. Physical simulation chamber. Tomorrow." The chamber was a large hexagonal space with variable gravity nodes and configurable terrain panels. Drew stood on a raised platform, dressed in a flex rig suit. Kellen and two medtechs observed from behind a transparent wall. Velik stood behind them, arms folded. "Begin with manual stressors," Kellen said through the comm. A drone launched a weighted object at Drew's upper chest. He caught it, staggered, and let out a surprised grunt. The implants in his legs tightened slightly, he felt it. Next, uneven footing. The terrain beneath him shifted into a steep slope. He stumbled, nearly fell, then suddenly found his balance snap back, like something inside him yanked his body upright before impact. "Implants are active," Kellen confirmed. "Minimal energy expenditure. Subtle correction pattern." Then came the real test. A projectile fired at his right arm. A blunt, padded impact ball, but fast. Drew didn't move in time. His arm did. His forearm twisted before he could react, catching the ball in a reflexive block. His muscles hadn't done that. The implant had. Alarms chirped. "Implant activity spike," Kellen said. "Neural sync increasing." The chamber darkened. Kellen's voice came through the comm again. "We're going to simulate a high-stress, low-light scenario. This may elevate the reaction." The platform shifted. Beams of light flickered. Another drone activated, simulating an attacker. Drew's breath quickened. The drone lunged. He moved before thinking. Not fast enough. The drone hit his left side, sending him to the ground. He groaned, rolled onto his back, and then nothing. The implants didn't respond. Not to the pain, not to the threat. "Kellen," he gasped. "They're not activating." Kellen frowned. Vital signs stable. Minor contusion, but no implant response. Drew sat up slowly. "Why not?" Velik stepped forward. "Because they're not protecting you from pain. They're protecting you from fatal risk. That wasn't real enough." Kellen nodded. "They're not universal enhancers. They only act when your system passes a specific stress threshold." Drew shook his head. "So I have internal bodyguards who show up only when I'm actually dying?" "Essentially," Kellen said. Velik studied Drew for a long moment. "You understand now. You're not a weapon. You're a survivor with extra armor." Drew exhaled and let his body relax. The implants pulsed just once and settled again. Drew sat in the observation suite, legs dangling off the edge of the diagnostics platform. For the first time in over a week, his hand didn't ache, and his thoughts weren't spiraling with unknowns. The implants still hummed under the surface, silent, obedient, but they felt less like a lurking shadow now, more like a misunderstood tenant. Kellen tapped through his readings, brows lowered in concentration. Velik stood behind him, expression neutral, but no longer suspicious. The room was quiet, broken only by the soft chirps of med scanners and the occasional shift of a monitoring drone. Drew cleared his throat. "So, what's the verdict?" Kellen glanced up. "Your implants display conditional autonomy. They react only to threat levels that exceed your baseline tolerance for harm, which, by human standards, is abnormally high." "I do stub my toes a lot without crying," Drew offered. "Maybe they think I'm invincible." "They learn from you," Kellen said. "Adapt to your rhythms, your limits. They've synced to your behavior in a way we didn't expect. It's not programming, it's familiarity." Velik stepped forward. "What's the functional risk level?" "Low," Kellen admitted. "Unless he encounters something lethal, the implants stay dormant. When active, they operate defensively, never offensively. There's no embedded weaponization." "Then we're done here," Drew said, hopping down from the platform. "Right? No more lockdown? No more sterile pajamas and tests involving drones that punch?" "You will still require periodic monitoring," Kellen said. "But you are medically cleared for limited duty." Velik nodded once. "Stay out of secure tech bays. Avoid conflict. Report any new activity. Otherwise, you're free." A grin spread across Drew's face, wide and sincere. He raised his bandaged right hand in a salute. "Understood, Commander." Later that day, he returned to Deck 7, where the maintenance crew worked among humming conduits and the sweet, ever-present scent of ion lubricant. A few heads turned as he walked in, carrying a standard-issue tool belt and a datapad under one arm. Halston, a senior tech with the complexion of a sunburned apricot and the personality of a malfunctioning vending machine, narrowed his eyes. "You cleared?" "Fully," Drew said. Halston didn't move, then slowly nodded and handed him a line recalibrator. Vent 6 keeps ghosting. Might be a fried sensor. Or a ghost. Dunno anymore. Drew took it with a grateful nod. The unspoken truce hung in the air, thick but settling. As he worked his way into the maintenance crawlspace, he couldn't help but talk aloud. "Bernie," he said softly, "you're lucky you missed all of this." He had stashed the leech in a sealed nutrient vial in his locker. Kellen had insisted it be analyzed before reintroducing it into any non-Earth biosystem, but Drew was holding out hope. Bernie had, after all, started this whole adventure. It felt wrong to leave him out of the ending. 2 days passed without incident. On the third, an alert sounded in the corridor, non-emergency but urgent. Drew emerged from the crawl space to find MedTech Rella waving at him. "Drew, you're wanted in medbay." His gut tensed. "What now?" "It's not about you," she said. "Well, not directly." He followed her quickly. When they reached the diagnostics lab, Kellen was hunched over a display, reading unfamiliar code. Beside him sat an open container, the same one Drew had left Bernie in. But it was empty. Drew blinked. "Where's—" "He expelled something," Kellen said without looking up. Drew stared. "What?" Kellen pointed to the display. The leech excreted a protein sheath microscopically thin, organic but clearly engineered. "We almost missed it." "Engineered how?" "It contains a filament array, absorbs localized electromagnetic frequencies, and mimics surrounding tissue structure. It's a cloaking gel, Drew." "For what?" "For hiding implants." The silence was sharp. "You're telling me Bernie was carrying stealth tech?" "Or mimicking it," Kellen said. "More likely, the leech fed on trace residuals from your hand and adapted its saliva output accordingly. These creatures are highly sensitive. Your augmentation altered its biology." "Then it learned to hide the implant's signals?" "Exactly." Drew leaned against the counter. "Okay, but why is this important now?" "Because when we scanned the excretion pattern, it matched an older diagnostic signature and pinged a second leech specimen that was brought aboard on another vessel 5 weeks ago." "Wait, this happened before?" "Yes," Kellen said quietly. "Another human. Similar implant. Cloaked. Their medbay missed it entirely." Drew frowned. "So, I'm not the only one. You were the only one flagged because of Bernie." The leech gave us a roadmap. Velix entered then, holding a fresh datapad. Her expression was taut. "There are at least 3 more humans on record with similar augmentations. 2 on Earth, 1 in transit between sectors, all slipped through with partial medical flags, all classified under Delta Series programs." "So what happens now?" Drew asked. "We investigate," Velix said. "Quietly, discreetly. We don't want panic. Your implants may be harmless, but the next one might not be." Drew nodded slowly. "Do I get a badge for helping expose a galaxy-wide stealth program?" "No," Velix said without pause. "But you may have saved lives." Kellen closed the display. "I've also authorized Bernie for limited reintegration." Drew grinned. "You're serious?" "Containment vial only. No open-skin contact. And no naming future medical organisms." "Too late," Drew said. "Bernie's already got a fan club." By the following week, Drew was back to full duty. The swelling in his hand was gone. The biopsy site was a faint scar. The implants hadn't stirred once since the simulation. He kept up with follow-ups, ran his own scans when he could, and even started recording minor logs when his tendons twitched more than expected. But for the most part, life resumed. The ship's crew warmed to him again slowly. He even caught Halston mumbling something vaguely complimentary about his wiring technique. On the 10th day, Drew stood in Storage Bay 4, organizing a fresh shipment of sensor modules when a young tech approached. She was nervous, fresh out of academy, clearly trying to summon courage. Mr. Carver." "Drew's fine," he said. "I heard what happened, with the implants, the medbay stuff." "Yeah, bit of an unplanned adventure." "Can I ask, were you scared?" Drew looked down at his right hand, flexed the fingers. "I was. A lot. Not because I thought I'd hurt someone, but because I didn't know if I was still myself." The tech nodded slowly. "But you are?" He smiled. "More than ever." She left a minute later. Drew turned back to the stack of crates, sighing quietly. Inside his locker back in quarters, Bernie floated lazily in his vial, unaware that his nutritional instincts had cracked open a covert network of military-augmented humans. Sometimes, Drew reflected, the galaxy didn't need explosions or space battles to change course. Sometimes, all it took was a sore hand, a stubborn leech, and a guy just trying to do his job.